Okay, so this is kind of my shitty drawing here, but this is your up pipe going to your turbo, your down pipe, external wastegate. It can either dump back into your down pipe or it can just dump to atmosphere, right? But we all know with the way the EPA is watching everybody, we are dumping it back into our downpipe and then it goes through our cat right here. So I put a Mishimoto turbo blanket on here because I've got a front mount now and I don't have any way of hooking up a heat shield here. I probably could if I make some parts or something like that, but the way I've got my setup, there's really no way. I think there's like one bolt that I could hook up and get a shield in there, so I went with a turbo blanket. And I've been noticing that I can't hear this guy anymore, the external wastegate. So what happens is, in order to stop exhaust gases from going through your turbo, it opens up and bypasses the turbo. Normally it's up here in the turbo and there's a little tiny flap that opens and dumps it back into here, thus bypassing the wheel and going into your downpipe. But when you have an external wastegate that's on your up pipe down here, I mean, they're pretty loud. You know when they're open, okay? And it's one of my favorite sounds. But I noticed the other day, I'm like, I can't hear my wastegate. So I start pushing my car a little bit harder. And I can kind of hear it right around, like, I don't know, 5,500 RPMs or so. But I never took it past 5,500, so I'd hear it 5 to 5,500. And what I know is happening, because I've got like 13 psi spring in my external wastegate, is as soon as I hit 13 psi or more, because my car is set up to run 18, it would just open. So my car would get loud, but I wouldn't get that chatter, that trying to maintain 18 psi, because the 13 psi spring would go nope and just full blown open as I'm getting higher in the thing. So I also felt a lack of power. But since I don't push my car hard, I didn't notice it. And so once I did some investigating, so my boost reference comes off the turbo and it tees into the electronic boost controller, and then it goes down to the wastegate. And then from my electronic boost controller, another one comes down and goes to the other side of the wastegate. The third one on my Grimspeed dumps to atmosphere. So the way this is designed is it will use the boost to help keep it closed as well as the spring, and then it'll bleed some of it off, allowing it to regulate itself, right? I mean, that's all a boost control solenoid does, is it bleeds off air and keeps this boost reference from hitting that. So what it'll do is it'll actually bleed it off from here and force it down here, and it'll hold it closed longer. So not only do you have your wastegate spring holding it closed, but you also have this boost reference holding it closed longer until it sees this reference, and then it's like, okay, we're at 18 psi, go ahead and open a little bit. Boom, open again, you know, and that's where you get that noise. So I come over here and I look down in there. No, I can't see it. So there's the two lines going into the boost controller, or sorry, the wastegate. That's the boost controller. Thank you, Grimspeed. Love you guys. You're awesome. Thank you for the shirts and the hats and everything else. So that's a TurboSmart it's a TurboSmart external wastegate. I went with them because I have the option of being able to water cool it, and since we have these two lines right here, we can tee into these lines, and I can actually, well, I can split this line, run it down through there, and then bring it back up and run it back to the radiator. And then what that'll do is, even though that your coolant is at 200 degrees, we're just picking arbitrary numbers here, it'll maintain that boost controller at 200 degrees because your exhaust gases are a lot hotter than 200 degrees, right? And in turn, it'll make that hot. So if you run coolant through it, it'll last a hell of a lot longer, and you won't go through the things as fast. But I'm gonna do that once I get my new turbo. And then this is all opened up again, and then see that little nipple down there sticking out on top next to the black? That's a plug for where the water jacket is, and you flow water through the head. Anyways, so I'm looking at that where it connects. Can you see it? Yeah, right there. See how it goes down into the external wastegate? Where it goes over the nipple on the one on the right. So, since we didn't have the thing working right, I took a look at that, and that is what I found. So as you can clearly see, it is just blown apart. Now what I think happened is when I put this turbo blanket on there, I might have folded the hose over a little bit, and then until this did a couple heat cycles and shrank down a little bit, it was just pushing on it, right? It was bending it over a little bit, and it just blew through the side of it once it did a few heat cycles and got hot. Which isn't a big deal, we just lose boost and power, and now we're running at 13-14 psi instead of the 18-20 like it's supposed to be running at. So, yeah, if you guys don't hear your wastegates anymore on your externals, then start looking at your hoses and stuff, and check everything out. Give her a go, because I literally looked at that hose probably 3 freaking times before I finally saw the break in it. And I kept driving my car, and I'd come back and look at another thing. I even freaking put my homemade leak down tester onto my system and pressurized it to see if I had any boost leaks or anything like that. And freaking, I couldn't maintain boost pressure, so then I went around and started checking out couplers and everything else like that. But the reason I couldn't maintain it is because of how I showed you over there, how it's hooked up, right? The hose comes off the turbo, and right there, it tees. See the red goes to black, and that red underneath it? That red's only like 4 inches long, and then it goes to another coupler which drops down, and that's the one that broke. So I couldn't hold boost, or when I was doing a leak down test of the piping. And I mean, I checked the freaking intercoolers, I checked everything, which is a good thing. You're supposed to do that. Make sure all your shit's nice and tight and that you're not blowing boost out somewhere, right? So, I mean, I even checked that stupid hose, the bypass, which, because of the electronic throttle body, they sit there and push on that and vibrate and eventually break through and everything. And so I looked at that super hard. I mean, you go to all the usual spots, and I glanced down at that a couple times. Like I said, I looked at it 3 times and never saw that damn thing broken. But for whatever reason, tonight, when I looked at it, it was clear as day. I mean, the nipple was stuffed through that hole. It was... So, anyways, now you know.